Okay. Hi, I'm Conard Holton, Chief Editor of Laser Focus World, and I'm here with Turan Erdogan, who is the Chief Technology Officer of Idex Optics and Photonics Division. Turan was the original founder of Semrock, which he was sold to Idex in 2008. I recently visited Semrock. They've opened some new facilities, bringing in some new optical coating equipment, and I thought I'd catch up with Turan to see what they're up to and find out what the future holds. So, Turan, what is the new facility about? What's going on there at Semrock? It's pretty exciting.
I think as you saw when you visited Semrock, most of our business today is based on making optical filters using ion beam sputtering technology, technology that was developed actually several decades ago, but really became prominent commercial technology in the 1990s when it was used for making telecommunications filters. And we adapted that about 10 years ago to producing fluorescence filters and similar type optical filters. The thing about ion beam sputtering, though, is it's a very high-end technology. It produces fantastic optical thin film coatings and therefore very high performance filters, but it was never really designed for producing very large capacity. So when you want to make filters in a higher volume type applications where you're selling not just a few hundred or a few thousand filters per year, let's say, but you're selling tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or even ultimately millions of filters per year, ion beam sputtering is not necessarily the way to go. And so we've made an investment recently into a new thin film coating technology that we think is going to give us just about the same or almost the same performance for a fluorescence type filter as we can get from ion beam sputtering, but also allows us to produce those filters in much higher volumes cost effectively. So for those applications that need that, we're going to be able to service that side of the community.
Okay. And those applications would be, I understood then, in personalized medicine or devices or a lot of biomedical, in the biomedical field?
That's right. I mean, there are a number of examples one could imagine for optical filters in general being required in much higher volumes. Our specific focus tends to be more on the biotechnology or life sciences side of things because that's where much of our business is today. So we tend to make filters that are used in life science research instrumentation today. We think there's going to be a significant growth in diagnostic instrumentation in the future based on fluorescence. The same technology that's being used in research instrumentation today will be used for clinical diagnostic type applications. And ultimately, we see those moving more and more towards not only more volumes of instruments, but smaller instruments, more compact instruments, ultimately even instruments that are not only used in, let's say, a hospital bedside situation or a doctor's office, but even something that could be purchased by a consumer. And when we get to that point, I think the volumes of those instruments are going to be quite significant, and the requirement for light sources, CCD imagers, or similar CMOS imagers, inexpensive optics and filters is going to be quite high, and we want to be the provider of the optical filters for those applications.
I remember when I was there, I was talking to some of your colleagues, and I was trying to understand the international competition. I mean, right now you have an opportunity, I think, to be at the head of it. Do you see this as an area where you can really establish a clear leadership role, or is all of a sudden some of the competitors in Europe and Japan liable to jump in pretty quickly?
So yeah, that's a great question. One of the interesting things about thin film coating technology and producing the types of optical components that we make is that much of the cost is actually wrapped up in the production equipment itself and the processes. They're not necessarily very labor-intensive processes. Thin film deposition is, a vacuum deposition technique, and the limiting factor there is really the speed with which you can put down these thin films very precisely. So we're not necessarily concerned about international competition coming from parts of the world where labor is very inexpensive, and therefore, we think our prices are going to be undercut or something like that. I think you're right in asking, is the competition more something that you might see in some of the higher technology parts of the world, like Japan or Germany or places like that? And certainly that is, always a concern. Whenever it comes to competition, I think one is well served by focusing first on what it is that you do best and figuring out how to do better and better yourself, and not so much worrying too much about what other people are doing. But you have to keep your eye on the ball. You have to keep your eye on what advances are being made out there that you might not have thought of, because we do respect our competitors greatly, and we know there's a lot of really smart people out there. But I think that not too many people at this point are really focusing on, particularly in the area of thin film coatings and filters, are focusing on these high volume applications. So one of our intentions is to sort of be there first, and in that way be one of the front runners.
Great. Well, I guess as part of that question, since Idex has acquired you, what is that difference has that made for you? Is that enhanced resources you've got, or giving you a different kind of direction than you had before?
Yeah, also a great question. I know many people have asked the question, well, you're part of a now almost $2 billion company, so I guess you must have a lot more cash to do things with. But
of course.
But the truth is, Idex is a wonderful company, but it's a public company, and our number one goal is to run a very good business. We want to grow at healthy growth rates, and we want to return high profits so that our shareholders are happy with the performance of the business. So we don't necessarily spend cash any more or less carefully than we did before we became part of Idex. We've always been pretty carefully measured in our spending of capital equipment dollars, for example. But I think, to answer your question, Conard, I think the number one advantage that I've seen for Semrock as a result of becoming part of the Idex family is kind of the growing up of the business into a really professionally run, streamlined business. One of the things that I see today that wasn't necessarily something we focused on before we became part of Idex is kind of a disciplined business model where we pay very close attention to some key metrics that tell us literally on a daily basis, but we also look monthly, we also look quarterly. How's the business doing? We sit down very intentionally and decide what metrics are going to tell us that this business is running well, and how are we doing? Measuring those things regularly. And that's not something we really did when we were a smaller business and before we were part of Idex. And I think that sort of thing really makes a big difference. As my boss, Mike Cumbo, likes to say, and I know he didn't invent this, but what gets measured gets done. And I think I really see that happening at Semrock today.
Well, you are the CTO of all of the Idex Optics and Photonics division. That's correct?
Yes.
So across the different divisions, do you see a particular focus? What do you see coming in terms of market interest? I mean, is bio-optics, biophotonics like sort of a general corporate direction you see that's like at the highest priority, or are there lots of other areas where you see good growth potential?
Well, actually, life sciences and sort of the diagnostic and medical treatment follow-on opportunities for optics are very, very important to us, not only to Semrock, but also to Idex Optics and Photonics platform. But it's not the only area that we're focused on. We are trying very hard to decide, what are the markets that we really want to focus our attention on and, become experts in those markets. We don't want to chase anything and everything, so to speak. So life sciences is definitely one of those. But we're also very interested in continuing our penetration and expertise in the semiconductor market, for example. We have a long history of providing optical systems like lens assemblies and optical components into that market. So that's a very important market for us as well. At the heritage of CVI laser optics, which is really one of the larger
Right.
portions of the Idex optics and photonics business is laser optics. So we're obviously also very interested in a wider array of applications for laser optics. Laser materials processing, for example, is a very important market for us as well. So, and that's really an industrial market more than anything else. So industrial applications, semiconductor applications, life sciences, these are all very important to us. But I wouldn't say that we're chasing anything and everything. We've got some pretty tight focus around those areas and maybe a few more.
Okay. All right, great, Turan. Thanks very much. It's Conard Holton from the Laser Focus World, talking to Turan Erdogan with IDEX Optics and Photonics in Rochester, New York. Thanks.